Wingardium Leviosa!
Oops. Sorry. Look, it's not my fault you're standing in the path of the objects I'm levitating. Hello there! Our journey of ranking all Harry Potter games with the help of my Stasocritic system continues. Details about scoring are in the pinned comment. In the last video, we have discussed how the Harry Potter games have entered a pretty turbulent period, with Goblet of Fire titles not quite reaching the levels of quality as some of the previous games did. Today, we will see if Harry's outings based on his 5th year in the Order of the Phoenix will improve the situation. The mainline Order of the Phoenix game developed by EA UK marks the first time the developers have managed to license the actual music from the movie, and even then of just a single track, though of course it is the most iconic one, Hedwig's theme, and not any of the interpretations from the actual movies, but a rendition that would have to be done specifically for the game by its composer James Hannigan. Of course, Order of the Phoenix doesn't rely on Hedwig's theme alone. The game's soundtrack actually reuses leitmotifs from previous games, as well as adding new ones that fit its style and tone, so in a way there is more musical consistency than in the actual movie scores, with their composers seemingly not caring what people before them have done. I know that starting discussing a game with its music may sound weird, but it's important. You see, all previous Harry Potter games, despite being movie tie-ins in terms of their release dates, by and large were doing their own thing stylistically. They could work just as well as book adaptations, except Goblet of Fire, which based its character models off actual actors and the locations were more similar to those used in the films, but it was still mostly doing its own thing. In Order of the Phoenix though, your very first experience upon launching the game is seeing Hogwarts exactly the way it was in the movie, while Hedwig's theme plays on top of the footage. This is not just a game based on the same source material that's released at the same time as the respective film, it's an actual movie tie-in. And it just oozes atmosphere not just in its open world rendition of Hogwarts, but everywhere. When you press the start button and the title screen swiftly transforms into the Daily Prophet newspaper that then acts as a menu, you know this game was developed with care. There's so many wonderful details, like how shortcut portraits sleep when they're inactive, how activating a waypoint on the Marauder's map shows footprints on the ground pointing towards where you need to go, how the tutorials for new spells are wrapped into the whole context of Harry teaching them to the members of Dumbledore's army, how students in the background discuss current events, how nearly headless Nick appears to talk to you about things happening in the castle if you appear to be stuck or don't know where to go. There are a lot of Easter eggs that fans of the franchise would love, like for example finding the entrance to the Chamber of Secrets. In terms of narrative, Order of the Phoenix is not a particularly great adaptation of the source material. Even though all important plot beats are in, most of those are skimmed through. But the game is exceptionally good at expanding upon things that in the movie were delegated to montages. More specifically, the process of gathering together and training Dumbledore's army and the following chaos the students have started. This is accompanied by lighting and special effects. Hogwarts is bright and there's quite a bit of a bloom effect in the first part of the game, but as soon as Umbridge becomes the headmaster, all that is gone. The environments feel moody, nobody plays minigames anymore, and the accompanying soundtrack fits the more depressing state of the situation. But the playfulness in visuals and music is reintroduced once you start rebelling against Umbridge. There's a lot of enjoyment to be found in how the game delves pretty deep into interpersonal relationships between a variety of different students. Each member of Dumbledore's army is memorable in their own way. And what makes all this more valuable is the dialogues between Harry, Ron and Hermione after pretty much every mission goal and even discovery of some secrets. There is a lot of nice chatter that makes it feel like they're real friends.
What was that about?
Don't ask me. Pam has been funny with me ever since the Yule Ball.
She's still upset because you didn't dance with her.
She's not said anything.
Oh, Ron. With girls, it's what we don't say that matters.
You should write a book. Translating mad things girls do so boys can understand them.
And there is a lot of references to previous Harry Potter movies, a real treat for the fans.
What's up with these midgets? There's no way I would have ignored Professor McGonagall when I was a first year.
No, of course not, Ronald. In your first year, all you did was fight a troll, save an illegal dragon, and ignore the advice of Professor Dumbledore so Harry could fight Professor Quirrell. Let's go to the divination tower.
All characters have their likenesses based on the respective actors, though not everyone reprises their roles. We do have Rupert Grint playing Ron though, and while neither Daniel Radcliffe nor Emma Watson reprise their characters, their professional voice-alikes do a great job as well. The voice acting is really good, though sometimes there's a certain uncanny feeling because of models being very polished in terms of fidelity, but not quite polished enough in terms of animation. There is somewhat robotic lip sync, lack of eye movement, and absence of any particular body language. But for what it's worth, most of the time the character models are not seen up close, rather a bit from a distance, amidst not only a fantastic visual rendition of Hogwarts, but one with an amazing soundscape as well. The sound effects provide so much life to the surroundings. And look, it's not that we didn't have any immersive Harry Potter experiences before, and it's not like a Harry Potter game can be immersive only when it's more closely based on the movie, but tapping into the film did help Order of the Phoenix to create an incredibly detailed world, which you feel like you've been literally transported into. A final amazing touch is the direction of the spellcasting mechanics. They're actually analog, you have to do wand motions with a stick, mouse or Wiimote depending on your platform. The feeling of a spell being cast after you waggle your real or virtual arm is unmatched in terms of immersion. But this is where we get to some pretty big issues. The previous, more cartoony renditions of Hogwarts and characters would allow the games to create some impossible geometry or challenges that wouldn't make sense in a movie even with the existence of some far-fetching chambers in mind, but feel at home in a game. In an incredibly realistic and lifelike environment, it wouldn't be fitting for Flitwick to send you into some sort of ice dungeon inside the school that gets filled with lava and lizards once you find a spellbook. And it's not a problem on its own, there is just different styles of doing things. But Order of the Phoenix really struggles to find what kind of gameplay to put into its exceptionally immersive movie-inspired Hogwarts. Most of the game you'll be doing stuff like lighting up torches across the school, fixing broken vases, placing benches on the correct spot, lighting up torches again because there is literally tons of them, mopping floors, like literally most of the game. Shouldn't someone else be taking care of Hogwarts' janitorial duties? Some of the main missions are interesting enough, but most amount to fetch or collection quests like finding 5 token gargoyles across Hogwarts. By the way, any gargoyle that you would have found before starting this mission doesn't count, so you'll have to find them all over again. The dialogues are funny though, sometimes tragically so.
You don't know where the other talking gargoyles are, do you?
I haven't seen another gargoyle since the one on that plinth disappeared.
What happened to him?
About a year ago, some boy flew through here being chased by a dragon. It knocked my friend right over the edge. Come back and talk to me sometime, won't you? This is a great place for a picnic. Come around any time.
It wasn't your fault, Harry.
At least there can be a lot of missions active at the same time and you can do them in various orders, so there's enough freedom. There's also dueling, but it is pretty slow paced while managing to feel very chaotic. Your spells keep missing for some reason, and even though there are 6 incantations that can be used in combat, I found that it's better to just spam the simplest ones. Protego to defend yourself and Expelliarmus to do damage. And as atmospheric as the spellcasting system is, its implementation can be pretty finicky. The margin for error in stick movement is not that big, so prepare for quite a bit of failed casts even when it feels like you're doing all the right motions. In the end, I will assign a Stasocritic rating of 68 to Order of the Phoenix. In many ways, it is underrated. On one hand, it got plenty of praise for its atmosphere and world, but it always felt to me like it's been really understated just how much work has gone into an insane amount of details found in the game. But also, outside of the Hogwarts tourism aspect, it's not that interesting to play because of tons of menial tasks. So it's one of those cases where your enjoyment will really depend on what you value most in a game. I felt enthralled by the game's atmosphere, but not everyone will be. The Order of the Phoenix for PSP was developed by Rebellion, and for the most part it tries to recreate the console open-world experience. And it's a really impressive attempt, honestly. There are some flow changes in terms of how quests are structured, a whole new side activity type about helping bullied students, and there's far less things to repair or clean up across the school. This does mean that overall there is even less things to do than in the console version. Not to mention that the soundscape is poorer, there's less students in the world, so it feels a bit dead sometimes, a lot of dialogues and Easter eggs are missing. The game is still atmospheric enough for a handheld, but a lot of things from the console version that would make you feel really immersed into the world are not present. This in turn creates a situation where core gameplay has an even bigger focus than before, and it's far clunkier. Moving around doesn't feel great, and casting spells feels quite horrible. There is no wand motions this time, it's all about button combinations, but every cast is incredibly delayed because the game waits for a long time to see which buttons would be pressed. The PSP version has a separate mode for dueling against the computer or other players, but because of how the spell system works, the mode is more bothersome than exciting. The Order of the Phoenix will get a Metacritic rating of 48. It's an admirable attempt at recreating the console experience on a handheld, and it's not the worst game out there, but it still falls pretty flat. The DS Order of the Phoenix was developed by Visual Impact, and it's kind of a point-and-click adventure game. I say sort of because it doesn't really have any puzzles per se. The way the whole game is structured is that you're sent to a particular location or person, complete a minigame, sent to another location or person, complete a minigame, and so on and on and on. If at any point you try to explore somewhere you're not meant to go, characters accompanying you will block you from doing so. And that's for the better, I guess. It's not like there's anything to do except the goal you currently have. You don't have the option to complete various tasks in parallel like on the bigger consoles. And look, the structure may be simplistic, but there is nothing wrong with it in principle. It can be done well. Not here though. You'll have to walk a lot among these locations that try to recreate Hogwarts really close to how it looked in the console title, with almost nothing to do or see on the way. Then most of the minigames you have to complete are really not fun. The best I guess is Quidditch, but it's literally just the GBA Quidditch World Cup gameplay, and that one was clunky anyway. The turn-based dueling in this game is horrible, they're very slow-paced, after every spell selection you have to complete a minigame and there is barely any strategy. Speaking of spell touchscreen minigames, even outside of dueling you have to complete one every time you try to cast something. I'm not sure why the game couldn't limit itself only to draw on the spell signs, which it already has anyway and it works fine. The minigames that follow feel like just padding. There is not much else the game can offer. The world is barren, the atmosphere is even more poorly defined than on the PSP, the narrative is more truncated though it does have some nice dialogues taken from the bigger versions. I will assign a Metacritic rating of 30. Order of the Phoenix for DS is a very boring game, with its only saving grace being some positive aspects from the world of Harry Potter itself, but really, there are far better alternatives for that. The GBA Order of the Phoenix was also made by Visual Impact, and it might feel like it's a port of the DS version but with far worse graphics. And at a basic level, yes, it is. Most of the structure and tasks you have to do are the same. But it's actually not as boring to play. There are two reasons for that. First, Hogwarts here is actually smaller. It's not as faithful a recreation of the console one as it was on DS, so you don't have to walk as much between the minigames. But also the game just frequently teleports you closer to the target locations, again saving more time. And the second reason is that the minigames are snappier and faster to complete, even the dueling one doesn't feel as grueling. Sadly, just because the game is not as boring doesn't mean that it's particularly interesting either. I will assign a score of 42, as at the end of the day what we're left with is a horrible looking collection of fine enough minigames with a bit of walking in between. Not the worst, but also not great. Developed by EA Mobile, this Java title has many different variations for phones of various capabilities. There's versions for more powerful ones, as well as those that were literally cut down though overall try to recreate the same experience. But we'll take a look only at the fullest version, since even though one can roughly divide all existing variants into 3 categories, there's many smaller differences among versions for various phones, so it will just be really painful to try and categorize all the variations into different entries. Order of the Phoenix is one of those games that's absolutely adequate, and that's pretty much it. Well, perhaps a bit annoying at times, particularly during dueling minigames, where you have to press a button while the randomly moving wand goes over some circles. There are stealth segments and the rules are pretty clear and consistent, but the movement mechanics make those feel a bit annoying, though that is actually a bit less of an issue in the cut down versions due to a different camera angle. Not much else to discuss, really. It's an hour of acceptable, but ultimately forgettable experience to which I will assign a score of 46. Might be of interest to big Harry Potter fans, but that's about it. Another EA mobile game for Java, likewise with several different variants, but we're discussing only the fullest one. This is a collection of minigames wrapped in a context of spell lessons and preparing for an exam at the end of a year. While the connection between mechanics and spell lessons is shaky at best, there is enough minigames to provide some variety, their implementation is fine, and the progression systems are sufficient for some engagement. By the end of the year, lessons can get genuinely challenging, so the motivation to replay is certainly there. I will assign a Stasocritic rating of 54. Mastering magic is nothing exceptional, but it can be a fun way to spend some time when you have nothing to do. Overall, the quality of Order of the Phoenix games is definitely higher than Goblet of Fire ones, but it's not a full return to form. Most of the handheld releases are alright at best, while the main console release is certainly amazing from the perspective of an immersive recreation of Hogwarts, but is pretty disappointing when looking at it purely from a gameplay and mechanical perspective. Still, there are more Harry Potter movies to go, which means that their video game tie-ins have a chance to get everything back on track. In the next video we'll see if that happened.
So good!